All right, I hit record and I'm with Tom, and this is Time with Tom. And I feel like I need a jingle. I need a jingle right now.
Please don't sing a
Yeah.
song
Time
that
with
causes.
Tom. It's time with Tom. Time with Tom. Time with Tom. Oh,
That's not bad. A little Schoolhouse Rock type thing would be good.
yeah. I'll work on it. I'll work on it.
Yeah.
What
I'm
is next
working
up?
I'm working on not saying or because I know you don't take any of them out.
I
So
take nothing out. There are no edits.
I'm trying to talk in complete sentences.
Nice. So it's okay. Laura listens to this on like 4 speed. So she won't hear any of it anyway. All right, sorry. Let me introduce what we're doing, because this is our first one. Now I'll introduce it in free. Um, Tom, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks for doing this with me.
Sure.
Sucker. Okay, so we've got 7 questions. We're gonna ask time with Tom. First question is best story we've consumed recently and why?
Sure. You threw me off because I thought the first story thing was what are you working on?
Oh, I
Uh
lied. First question, what are you working on? What you working on, Tom?
what you working on?
What you working on,
Uh
Tom?
so I
I had
could
to
give you
scroll my page up. My
I
page was
could
scrolled
yeah.
too far down.
I could give you the normal answer, but we were talking about being overbooked, and I know you did at least day job and coaching today. So I listed down what I worked on today
Ooh, oh, nice.
as somebody
Mm,
who has a day job. Granted, it's a day job that I can steal a lot of work time away from. Has kids, is
nice.
both an author and an author services person. So we
I
have all three of those things in
I
common.
will do this too. We can just do our
Yeah,
daily schedule. That
except
sounds great.
you have 14 kids and I just have two. So it's harder for you.
Some of them are older. They
But
don't want to talk to me anyway.
that's true. Uh, anyway, something that never happens to me. I woke up with an idea for a novel this morning, so I had to
Whoa,
write that down. I know, never
nice.
happens to me. Woke up with an idea for a novel, which is great. And did a developmental edit on a book on coaching youth sports.
Nice.
So which I know shit all about. Can I say
Yeah,
anyway? Yeah,
you can say
which I know
whatever the hell
nothing
you want.
about.
Tom, you can say
Uh,
whatever the fuck you want to say.
but I find I'm actually a good developmental editor for nonfiction because I'm intelligent and I don't know anything about the topic. And that's
Perfect.
generally who they, like if I
That's the
can't figure out
perfect.
what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's the
Um,
perfect developmental editor for nonfiction. Somebody who does not know your topic. That's
yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
So then I got the kids ready, took them to school. Then I took a beautiful walk where I got a little bit of industry podcast in, but mostly listened to some music. I went to my day job, which is selling books. And so I had to do ordering books and that sort of thing. I created a book cover for a customer. I answered a store email. And then used Atticus. I proofed the interior that I'd done on Atticus to make sure it was going to look okay. I find only about 10% of the interiors that I do, I can use Atticus because it works really well for straightforward things, and nobody ever has a straightforward thing. But this was a straightforward novel. Popped into Atticus. 30 seconds later, it popped out the interior and went through, and it looked fine. So that was great.
Nice.
One of the things I love in Atticus is you can upload your own section dividers.
Yeah,
So
that's nice.
this is a fantasy sword and sorcery type thing. So it's got a little rapier as the section
Ooh,
break.
that's
So
cool.
great.
Also very easy to screw up. JP and I had to go back and forth with little gravestone dividers like 7 times before it actually printed out right.
Um, and then on my personal writing, I am revamping my autoresponder because I am finally taking the Mark Dawson course, um,
Nice.
which I took half of 5 years ago and then didn't didn't finish. But right
Is
now
that the
I'm
self-publishing formula course?
yeah, self-publishing formula. It's exhaustive and pretty great.
Yeah.
Um, but I had a focus on personal writing last year to get up to 500 reviews on my first in series, which I did by
Nice.
giving away lots of copies.
That's amazing.
And this year, my mailing list is like 304 people. So my goal this year is to 10x
Boost that.
that.
Yeah.
And he's got a whole module
Hmm.
but you can't just throw up a Facebook ad because your uh, book funnel page has to be right to deliver. Then your autoresponder has to be right to get those people in the right mood
Yep.
and do all of that. So,
Yep.
um, and then I picked the kids up from school, and then I played some Mario Kart 8 with
Nice.
the kids, which was fun. Then I vacuumed the house, and then we all had dinner, and then we played some Hogwarts Battle, and then I made a new AI cover for the 10,000 word short that I'm giving away through BookFunnel.
Okay.
And the one that was up there was one that I had done when I very first started, and was very excited that I had figured out how to like throw a shadow on lettering.
Nice.
And then the new one, and actually, can I share screen? I got to show you these
Yeah,
because
yeah. Let me fix it so you
uh,
can. I gotta fix it so you can.
because one of the things I think is fascinating, and there is a point to all this, is that the technology just keeps speeding up and speeding up. And
Yeah.
I don't want to watch another I don't want to watch another or listen to another podcast about AI. I'm sort of done to death for me.
Yeah,
But
me too.
it's everywhere and it's everything,
Yeah.
and it's not coming. So this is one that I did, 7 years ago now,
Huh.
which is pretty horrible. But I was
Yeah.
just giving this thing away for free. I wasn't going to hire a book designer,
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
it away for free. And so, but now it looks like this. Can you see that?
Oh, that's cool.
And that took me a fraction of the time the first one took me.
That is nice.
I labored over I think I was using Microsoft Publisher when I did the
Oh
first
man.
one. Um,
That is a
and
beautiful cover. If for
and
those who can't see it, it went from like pixelated weird cityscape to very dynamic painting of woman in the rain. It's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is where when I love Joanna Penn to death, but the people who are saying that like it's just a creative tool, and it's like no, this is it did this for me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
no part of my creative brilliance is displayed in this image.
No.
I think I put in Korean woman standing in wind and rain, and that's what I got.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so
Yeah, that's amazing.
but one of the fun things about my job, I guess, is that's my day, and I get to do all those different things. I would like to be doing more of the creative writing because I
Yeah.
had that idea this morning, and it'll be probably 2 years before I get
Yeah, yeah.
to it. But it was a really good one, so I'm keeping it.
Yeah,
But
seriously.
and so we talk on Slack and a lot and stuff, but your days are the same. Like what did you do today?
What did I do today? I got up at 5, like I do every day. And thank you, Honorary Quarter, for teaching me when you wake up at 5, just put your feet on the floor. That's the secret. The secret to getting up at 5 is when the alarm goes off, put your feet on the floor. So, and Honorary taught me that. So yeah, so I got up at 5. I try to have the first 30 minutes of my day be just like me time. So from 5 to 5:30, I sat with a cup of coffee and I just like spent some time in silence, like pulling my crap together, not looking at my phone, just like getting my head ready for the craziness. Then I woke my oldest son and his girlfriend are here from college, so I woke them up because they had to catch a megabus at 6:30 to New York to go visit New York today. So I woke them up and then I made 6 lunches, one lunch for every kid and the girlfriend. Um, and then I made my own breakfast and I took them to New York and I came home and then I helped my other kid get ready for school and then it was 7:30 and today's a weird day. Most days at 7:30 I'm checking my email and I'm at my day job. But today was a weird day because I had to go into the office, which I'm excited to talk about this because it was a fun day. Every like probably once a month now, I have to go to the office. I work from home and I will never be able to work full time in an office again. I'm completely ruined for office work. And I had to drive. My commute's 45 minutes. So I drove into the office. I listened to a book on tape while I drove in. That's just okay. I'm not into it. And then I got to watch 216 auditions today. So they were actors that we hire actors to build the simulations we build. and they weren't just auditioning for us. It was an open audition call. So there were 216 actors from the Baltimore DC area each giving a 2-minute monologue. It was me and two other guys that I work with a big spreadsheet. And we listened to the monologue and we gave them a rating between 1 and 5. Each one we listen to. They don't always get to 2 minutes. And I will say, I used to think in the movies they always have this scene where like there's a director like sitting out in the audience and there's like people on stage and they're like auditioning, they get like 2 words out of the mouth and the director's like, next. And you're like, oh, that guy's horrible. No, I know after like 2 or 3 words, I know if it's worth watching or not. So like, because I do this all the time. So like, you watch 200 of these in a day, you kind of get into it. You start hearing the same monologues over and over again. Like you just know. So, but it is an interesting exercise in dialogue because you really learn like how people understand punctuation, how people convey emotion positively and negatively. Like there's a lot of like bad examples of like, I think this is really where I learned about like watching actors do these monologues was where I learned about like, okay, you got to smooth out your emotions. Big jumps of emotion are like bad. And so we do it as writers all the time. But I did that. I had a 30-minute lunch break. During my 30-minute lunch break, I prepped for a coaching call that I have tomorrow. So I like went through my notes so I'm ready for the coaching call tomorrow. Because for coaching calls, they send me like 2,000 to 3,000 word, or no, I'm sorry, coaching calls 4,000 to 6,000 words. I send them back edits, and then we meet for an hour to talk over those edits. But before I get on the call, I got to review for like 30 minutes. So I reviewed for 30 minutes for the call tomorrow, and then I got done with work at 3:30. I drove home. I was home by 4:30. I sat on the couch and watched Mandalorian season 3, episode 2 with my 8-year-old because he was very excited about watching it with me. He's been waiting for me to have a free 40 minutes. I ordered pizza for the kids because I didn't feel like cooking. My wife came home from work. We talked for 30 minutes. I took my 13-year-old, my 18-year-old and I are coaching my 13-year-old's basketball team. So I went and coached basketball. I came home and then I jumped on this call. I took a shower and then I jumped on this call. And I'm going to get off of this call and then I'm going to spend probably an hour and a half editing the book I'm working on. I'm working on the How to Write Dialogue book. So I'll get off of this call at 9 and I'll edit until like tonight I'll probably edit till 11:30 because I got to go pick up my son from the megabus at 11:30. And then at
So what
midnight,
a 1 day trip? Then they
yeah, they just went for a day.
Yeah.
And then at midnight I will come home and pass out and put my feet on the floor at 5 again tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I know I'm older than you, but I cannot do that. I just
I don't know that it's healthy for me to do, but I
no, it's not
haven't
healthy
had
for anybody.
yeah, I haven't had more than 5 hours of sleep a night since college. Sometimes I get 8. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I got to get 8. I'll go through phases. I'll go through phases where I'm like, I got to have 8 hours of sleep a night. But right now I'm in one of those 5 hours of sleep a night phases. So yeah,
More power to you. Can't
yeah,
do it.
yeah. Fueled by too much coffee, and late night eating, both of which are totally unhealthy. Okay, question number 2. But yeah, if
Yes.
people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you get all this done?
That
It's like, well, you don't
I do
stop.
wonder. Yeah.
Yeah, like I watched 40 minutes of TV with my 8-year-old. That's all the TV or video games I will watch today. That's all I did. And you just keep going. You don't stop and you maximize time. Like when I was making lunches, I was listening to the audiobook because I'm in the
Yeah.
kitchen by myself. So like, double duty. No, it's a terrible audiobook. I'm sad to listen to it. It's not terrible. It's very good. It's just not for me. But it's yeah. Anyway. All right, question number 2. Best story you've consumed recently.
Yes. So recently, and this is just watched with the whole family, but the 12-year-old had not seen Back to the Future. Um, and I wanted to bring that up because um, I read tons of storycraft books and I love like spotting it in the wild. You
Mm,
can read it, but until you see it.
yeah.
Um, and the particular thing that I mean, there's so many smart things in that movie, but one of the particular things I noticed and is the idea, and this is going back to the three C's of conflict, choice, and consequence, but the idea that if the conflict is um, caused by the actions of the protagonist, it is stronger and better.
Yeah.
And when you watch that movie, almost everything that happens is a direct result of something that once he gets in the DeLorean, which is it's all Doc's choices up to that point. But
Yep.
once he goes back in time, um, he keeps making things worse for himself through the choices that he makes, or better for himself, or
Mm-hmm.
even neutral, which is I think a really good example. Because when I talk with people about conflict, I'm often like, it can be conflict about anything,
Yeah.
right? Like if they're going to have a conversation, have them have that conversation while one of them is trying to get the other one to school on time, or so, you know what I mean? You can manufacture conflict, which sounds cheap and easy,
Yeah.
but it actually works. And there's a scene near the end where uh, Biff and the bad guys, which includes Billy Zane, by the way, in his
I know.
first
So
movie role.
weird. So
Uh,
weird.
Biff and the bad guys lock Marty in the trunk of a car to get him out of the way. And it turns out that that car is the car of the band. And when they try to get Marty out, the lead guitarist hurts his hand with a screwdriver, and therefore cannot play. And therefore, the dance is going to be over, and then mom and dad won't kiss, and Marty will never exist. And so Marty has to play guitar. But even that, which is not all that consequential when you think about like emotional choice or whatever, even that is set up so that it was a result of something that Marty was directly
Mm-hmm.
involved in. So, a story where a person has to fix a problem that somebody else caused is much less compelling than a story that's where the person has to fix a problem that they caused, which seems simple, but it's really,
Yeah.
really true.
No, it's super true. It's super true. That active protagonist like messing things up is great. It helps for character growth too,
Right.
because when the way they messed it up is the way that they have to change in order to fix it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's great.
you?
Okay, mine is Poker Face. Have you watched
Oh,
Poker
no, I
Face?
can't wait though.
Oh
I
man,
remember watching Russian Doll and
yeah,
thinking she's basically Columbo.
yeah,
Like
she is.
he
She's
is a
basically
he's like
Columbo.
a 75-year-old Jewish man
She
in
is.
Russian Doll. And so I can only imagine in Poker Face that she is actually Columbo.
It is Columbo with the Murder She Wrote storyline. And it's Rain Johnson, I think his name is. I've always forget his
Ryan.
name. Ryan Johnson. It's
Yeah.
he did Glass Onion, he did
Yeah.
Knives Out. And I read an interview with him talking about how much he loved Murder She Wrote growing up. And he wanted to retell Murder She Wrote in the modern day. And that's what this is.
Awesome.
It's
I can't
it's
wait.
it's angry New Yorker that talks like a 70-year-old shows up in a town and someone is immediately murdered. And then the catch is that she can tell when people are lying. And there's not
Mhm.
really magic. There's no like magic thing to it. She just knows and she says
Right.
bullshit a lot. So she can like tell when somebody's lying and she always calls them on it. She says like bullshit. So it's great. Like it's a great, but I think what I really enjoy about it is her character is static. Like
Mhm.
she changes. She has decisions to make every episode. Every episode, she's deciding whether or not to get involved. She's growing as a person, right? Like, so it's not that she's a static character, but she is always herself. And they have all of these amazing, one-time characters around her. And the one-time characters are just phenomenal. They're amazingly written. They all have really deep like wounds and flaws that they're trying to get over. They're just the characters are so flawed. And it creates just this perfect every murder is like that's a choice you made because you always know who did it. It's not a mystery who did it. It's not a who done it. They show you the murder right away. And then it's more of a how's she gonna figure it out. So every murder, there's a like you watch them do it, and you're like, ooh, you are making a choice based directly on your character flaw. And the question is like, when is it going to catch up to you? And then you insert this like human lie detector who is also a, gravelly voiced Jewish woman from
Yeah.
New York. And it's just perfect. This is perfect. But yeah, I love it. And they start in the second half of the season, they start doing this device in the writing that I actually really enjoy. They don't do it in the first episodes. I think I started catching it in like episode 3 or so. Although my wife told me it happened in episode 1 and I just missed it. Where you see the murder and you see things happen, and then they flash back and they show you that she's been there the entire time. So there's like a time where like a band member gets murdered. And it's like halfway through the show, you haven't seen our detective, Natasha Lyonne, the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden they re-show all the events and she's just like sitting right off camera. It's like you're like, oh, she's their roadie. She's been there
Yeah.
the whole time. We just haven't seen her. Like, so it's a fun game with the writing that they do where they like tell the story a second time through her eyes. And it kind of
Ryan
changes.
Johnson loves that. I
Yeah.
mean, Glass Onion did
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's Glass Onion. That's the big like game at
Right.
the end of like, let's
Yeah.
retell the story. Yeah.
The and he did the second of the new Star Wars movies, which also did a lot of reframing of
I didn't know he did that.
story. Yeah. So the whole thing with Luke being sort of like an astral projection at the end, I mean, and just those sort
Yeah.
of reveals. Which
Yeah.
brings up another topic that we should put on a list for another time. But
Okay.
I would love to talk to you about how you feel about purposely stilted dialogue, because I love it.
Yeah, so if it's in line, it's a good example in Poker Face. The dialogue in Poker Face is sometimes just bizarre, but it matches the character. The
Mhm.
characters are bizarre. Like one of the most recent episodes, Nick Nolte, which I haven't liked Nick Nolte in anything for a decade and a half, and he is great in this. But he is a washed up, has been horror movie director who only works with claymation. So his dialogue is really weird. And it's really like, he's very grumpy and grumbly and like doesn't really talk in full sentences. And
Mhm.
the dialogue is just off, but it's perfect for the character. It's perfect.
The reason I ask is because Ryan Johnson also did the movie Brick.
I
Which,
haven't
if
seen that
you
movie.
Brick is a classic noir gangster movie
Wait, is that
set in
with
a high
Edward
school.
Norton? No.
No,
Okay.
set in a high school. It's all
Oh.
kids. It's
Oh.
got Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the star.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go watch
And
that.
kind of like Heather's, there's an entire made-up teenager lingo.
Oh, nice.
And so there's all of these idioms and slangs that don't make any sense at all. They
Yeah.
made them up out of whole cloth. I had to watch it with the subtitles on.
That's really
but
funny.
It is a great movie. But
well, he does that in Glass Onion too. He's got the whole tech language of the tech entrepreneur who's just like saying bizarre words the whole time, and it's fantastic.
But yeah, Brick is great, and he also did Looper, which
I didn't know that either.
Also had a lot of, it's science fiction, so it's in the future, so people have different idioms. But Brick has there's no explanation given for why this high school operates like except that high schools have factions. Right. And
I will say
everyone in it plays it totally straight. Like,
nice. It's really easy to screw up stilted dialogue.
Yeah.
It's really easy. I think the key to it is you got to go all in. If you're going to do it, you got to have a system and you got to commit. Yeah. It's got to be all in.
Yeah. Heather's is a great example.
Yeah.
Oh, Heather, you're so very.
Yeah. It's a great one. Okay. Question number 3. Story that's broken that you consumed. I can go first on this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am reading. So I started another podcast about theology stuff called We Just Came for the Tacos. And I have been reading a whole bunch of old church books because we're analyzing them. And they're books that a former life Jeff used to live and die by. I would write down quotes from them and put them all over my wall. So I could, and I
So
would,
so like the Smiths for me.
yeah, yeah. And I would read those quotes. I would read those quotes every day. And this one particularly is called the Seven Habits. No, yeah, seven practices of effective ministry. It's a play on the 7 habits of highly effective people. In fact, the habits are the same. I'm not real sure how they got away with it, but they just did nobody was watching. Um, they start the book off with this allegory that goes on for 7 chapters of a guy going to a baseball game and sitting down next to a tech billionaire. And in every chapter, the tech billionaire talks to the pastor about why the baseball team that he owns works. And it drives me crazy because they clearly, like the writer clearly wants to set up this, like, I want to tell you, I want one of my characters to explain to you this solution, but I have no idea how to get to it. Like, I want to talk to you about this principle, but I don't know how to get there. So instead of like creating a conflict that forces us to go to the principle, the the character just starts like, hey, you see that catcher over there? Let me tell you how I made a great catcher. And then he just starts like talking about the catcher. And I'm like, I hate this so much. I was like, can we please apply basic storytelling principles to this? But it's an example of like, well, earlier we were talking about like the protagonist causing a problem. It's an example of a book that has no conflict. It's just, I have a theme. I want to live on that theme. So rather than like creating a conflict that forces characters to make choices, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to like set up them talking about this theme, and then 2 characters are going to talk about this theme for like 10 pages. And then we're going to move on to the next one. And it ends up feeling contrived, and it doesn't feel realistic. And you feel like you're being forced to watch an infomercial. It's the worst.
The other end of that spectrum is the nonfiction that feels realistic because it is, but because of that, it has no arc. It has no, it
Yeah.
just this happened and this happened and this happened and this
Yeah.
happened,
A
which
lot of
I run.
memoirs
I
are
see a
like that.
lot. I see a
Yeah.
lot in my client work.
Yeah. A
Uh,
lot of memoirs. A lot of memoirs
yeah.
of, and then
Well,
I would
that one,
hear,
that book was high on my list, Jeff, but I'm going to cross it off now.
yeah,
So,
good call. Good call. Cross that off. Yeah, good call. Yeah.
uh, mine's not exactly broken, just something that came up in our Dialogue Doctor book group when we were talking about paper towns, um, and it circled back to something that you've been talking about a lot lately. So I wanted to bring it up, which is making characters sit in the emotion of a scene. And so I'm reading Paper Towns, and I'm enjoying it because I'm a well-read white man, which is who these books are written for. I'm
From
pretty
the
sure.
suburbs.
Yeah, they're written
Yeah.
for 16
They're
16-year-old boys
written
who
for
are
us. Yeah.
16-year-old boys who are going to become
Yeah.
men. But and in the middle, I'm like, this is dragging. Why is it dragging in the middle? And then I watched the movie, and the movie is so accelerated that I could not feel for the character at all. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it's dragging because he's dragging. Not as bad as like when Melville's telling you about the whale for 400 pages, but he's really making you sit in the main character's psyche as he slowly uncovers the idea that this girl is not who he thought she was or who he
Yeah.
had sort of created his own model of. And still, it doesn't mean it didn't drag a bit in the middle, but it really made me appreciate when I watched the movie, and I was like, we need some of that sitting
Yeah.
in the emotion. We need to really, if we're gonna feel his journey, we gotta we gotta feel more of it. So
Yeah. And I think the problem I had with Paper Towns, the middle section that you're talking about, that really does make us feel it, what makes us sit in it, is that I did not relate to his idolization of this girl. And I think that's the danger of making a reader feel what your character feels,
yeah.
is it has to be relatable. And I didn't, when I read the first, I'd never read it before. When I read the first couple chapters, I was like, oh, I don't like this girl at all. I was like, she's got to go away. So, and I liked his friends. I liked his, like, he's going to college. I'm like, this kid has it all figured out. And then it's like, oh, wait, we're going to have this weird night where we like torture her friends and like things are going to drag after that as he like pines looking for her. And I was the whole time, I'm like, don't find her. Don't find her.
See, for
Just
me,
let her go.
for me, I think it dragged for the opposite reason, which is like I totally related to that kid.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's it's sort of the bane of the intellectual, not very interesting looking
Yeah. No, yeah.
kid,
Yeah.
short kid who doesn't have a chance with the girl of his dreams. I've been there, and I know that I know the lesson he's going to learn.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay,
Let's
let's
get to the
get to
lesson.
the
So
let's
it's
get to the
dragging for
lesson.
you because it was uncomfortable. You're like, I don't
It
want to
dragged,
sit here anymore.
yeah, well, and because I knew where it was gonna go.
Yeah.
Um, Although that book also does some nice stuff in the middle where he uh you don't have to wait for the end for him to realize that about change, because he starts to become a stronger, more outgoing person while she's gone.
Yeah.
Sort of like, I'm going to step in and do these. He blackmails the kid into giving the people their money back, and
Yeah.
all the, what I mean. he
Yeah.
he he starts displaying much more agency than he ever had before, so that tempers
Yeah.
it a bit too. But it's still a bit slow in the middle, and for me it was because I was like, I know where we're going, let's get there. But the movie does exactly that. The movie just gets there, and I was like,
Yeah.
well,
And
that
you
was
don't care.
unsatisfying.
Yeah. You don't care.
Exactly.
You're like, I don't care that we got. The other interesting one that does that is Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
The book is a mess in the middle. They're like going all over the country. There's no real reason that they go from one place to another, but he does a great job of sitting in like Percy's confusion and Percy's like frustration and Percy's anger. The movie, the first movie, lined it up. Like, we got to find these pearls, and the pearls are going to take us to the place.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all just like, you don't care. When he gets there, you're like, oh, I don't care about this. Like, you found the pearls, you're on this quest, you got there, hooray. Like, there's no, so it's a fascinating, like, I mean, I think ideally you can find a combo of like, we keep this moving by creating I find a countdown clock really keeps things moving.
Yes.
Like, which Paper Towns is, well, Paper
Paper
Towns
Towns
kind of
does.
has, because prom is coming.
Yeah.
But
uh
yeah, having that countdown clock can keep it moving. We're like, okay, we got to get this done by the time this thing happens. Yeah.
and he was pretty good at like letting out a clue just when you're starting to get really
Yeah.
frustrated. But it made me think of Harry Potter. Rowling, for some reason, decided that every book had to begin at the beginning of the school year and end at the end of the school year. And
Yeah.
so, like, that finale is not coming
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, we're not
until
getting here till
until
May.
May.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, all
Doesn't
right,
matter how much you're figuring out at Christmas.
right.
We got another, of course. She also time jumps a lot. She'll be like, no, it's April. It's like,
Yeah,
wait.
but even so, yeah, it can be a little rough in the middle.
Okay. Question you've been hearing from clients recently.
Um, not a question from them, but just again, I'm enjoying this session we're doing because it's a chance to talk about one of the reasons I like the dialogue doctor is the things that percolate up through you. I always see them in the client work.
Yeah.
And what I've seen a lot in the last couple novels I've worked on is narratives that need to be scenes.
Yeah.
And authors really at first don't get it, and are reluctant to do that because it means more work, or they think the book's going to get twice as long. But
Sometimes it does. Sometimes
yeah,
it's like, oh, you got 3 books here. Yeah.
yeah. Although usually I'm like, here's all the stuff that you don't need in this book, and
Yeah,
look,
that's
now you
super
have
true.
plenty of room.
Super true. Yeah.
Now you have plenty of room. But it makes such a huge difference in the reading. And when a book's flat and people can't figure out why it's flat, it's because they're telling whole passage, whole scenes. They're just telling you in two paragraphs, and it's like, that's a scene, man. That's
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I want
that's
to
a
see
scene.
that. I want to feel that. Yeah.
The and also I just thanks to you and a session you did with Shane, just worked with a guy on a cute little middle grade based on Japanese mythology. But the main character is a 12-year-old Japanese girl in a little village who wants to be a samurai, but of course can't because she's a girl. Um, and goes off into the woods on her own and
Mm.
finds adventure, but she's by herself
Oh man.
80% of the book. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, pretend it's a Disney movie. Give her a
Yeah.
talking newt on her shoulder.
Something.
Give her, let her talk to her sword. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Anything.
And he went back through. He's like, in book 2, I'm definitely giving her a sidekick, but in book 1, here's what I've done, and he made some good strides. So
Nice. That's
he
great.
also had a lot of scenes where I was like, you gotta write this scene out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have anything else to comment on that. That's great. I've this comes from for me in cycles. It's a weird thing. It comes up kind of once a year, and it tends to kind of track with like whenever there's a disruption in how publishing is working, it comes up. So I think the question that I'm getting from clients right now is like, hey, what do I do when I finish this book? I think the current disruption is everybody talking about Chat GPT and AI being able to write books. Um, which is it's an interesting tool. And, I'm not gonna lie, if you write genre novels, watch out because it's coming for you. Because if you write anything to a formula, it's coming for you. Um, at a minimum, authors will use it to sketch out their stories super fast. And it's going to take an author that can write a book a month. It'll get them to where they can write a book a week. Um, but it's got a lot of, I find a lot of the authors I work with questioning now, like, what do I do with this book? What do I do with this thing? And it's a hard question to answer because, there's not a lot of good options. It's like you can enter into the networking chaos of trying to find an agent, going to conferences, pitch fests, all that kind of stuff, trying to get the attention of a trad publisher. You can do the like small publishing house where you're like calling all the small publishing houses, trying to find the right match, trying to find the one that gives you your needs, and you get what you want, then they actually benefit you in some way. And or you can, indie it, but ending it, there's no guarantee that anybody's going to read it. So there's no guarantee in trad and small book publishing either that anybody's going to read it. So it's always tough because people like we work so hard on these things and we put our whole soul into them. And then you're left holding this book and you're like, what do I do with this thing? Um, and I really want there to be a system where I can just look at people and go like, this is the system, but there isn't. And there's just not. Um,
I totally get what you're saying,
yeah,
but I feel like I've sort of had an epiphany around that in the last year that has helped me with client work, because part of my issue with client work was always like, yeah, but is it good? And you're like, no, man, it sucks. But
yeah,
I don't want to say that to somebody. Um, but I think that the absolute hopelessness of the industry has allowed me to say my editing is focused on bringing out the book that you wanted to write,
yeah, yeah,
right? Which is
yeah.
a different thing,
It's
because,
very
and I tell
different.
them, 90% of what Random House publishes sells less than 5,000 copies.
Yeah.
And they're most of the industry, they're
Hmm.
almost half of the books sold. So trad publishing is not going to get you the accolades that you
No.
think it's going to, even if you make it. I mean, there's a small percentage, but there's also a small percentage of indies who are going to make a living and be, really
Hmm.
successful, and the rest are not. And it sounds terrible, but if you can start from that position of um any success I have is going to be luck, and move on to the I want to I want to write the book that I really want to write.
Yeah.
um, and let your editor help you do that, because most first time authors, and maybe even second, third time authors, don't really know how to write the book that they want
They
to
want to write. Yeah.
write. And so when you do that developmental edit and you say, like, what were you trying to do with this scene? And they're like, such and such. You're like, oh, well, that's not what came across at all. So
Yeah, that's not what you
let's take
did.
it right. So let's take it apart and put it together in a way. And that's not me telling them how to make a bestseller. That's me telling them
Yeah.
how to do convey the feeling that they wanted to convey.
Yeah.
Something you often say, which is like, what got you excited about this book in the first place?
Yeah. Why were you pumped about writing this? And
Right.
I think there's another thing I talk to authors that, again, this question kind of circles around it too, is like, is it good enough? And I'm always like, good enough for what? Like, you know, good enough to go up on Amazon and sell? Like, good enough for trad publishing? Probably, right? Like, because the I think the hard truth is we want the system of publishing to be merit based. We want it to be like the best books get published, but it's not what it is. Like, there's a line, and you do have to be above that line.
Mm-hmm.
But once you cross that line, there's a giant spectrum over the top of that line between like pristine, beautiful, wonderfully crafted stories and things that are just good enough.
Yeah.
And like, you can get above that line, just be good enough and get an agent and get a trad publishing deal and get a Netflix deal. And we read those books and we look at them, we're like, why is this? It's like, well, they were good enough. Like, it was a good enough story that readers wanted to invest in it and enjoy it. It doesn't have to be, every painting doesn't have to be the Mona Lisa, right? Like, and so I think when authors start asking me, like, is it good enough? I started saying, like, well, what did you want? Is it good enough for you? Like, that's who you've got to satisfy in your artistic taste, not because the reader is weird and they may or may not care if you fix that character arc. Like, I'd like to say, yeah, fixing that character arc is going to make readers fall in love with your book, but that's not necessarily true. They may fall in love with it without that fix, and they may not fall in love with it with that fix. Like, it's a weird, so
Yeah.
that it comes down to, like, are you, like you said, like, are you building the book you want to build? Are you happy with
And I think
it?
there are agents who only want to read something that's ready to go because
Yeah.
they're trying to push much through the pipeline. But I also think there are agents who, and this just struck me, sort of treat authors as chat GPT, where it's like, just bring me the bulk, right?
Yeah.
Like, and let me find the story that I think is going to work, and then I will tell you how to
Yeah. Well, the
rewrite that
nonfiction
story.
publisher I'm working with right now, he's like, I'm going to be your developmental editor. So he's like, I
Right.
want your draft and I'm going to tell you what I want you to do with it to fit the market. And I'm like, great. Like, that's what I want. Like, sounds good to me. Oh, yeah. So,
What I was going to say about agents, I think before we started, was uh, I was listening to this podcast called "Shit No One Tells You About Writing." Have you heard this one?
no, I haven't, but I love the title.
It's the back half of it is your standard author interview show, which
Yeah.
I
They're
get a
great.
little tired. I get a little tired of, because
Sure.
there's like one or two takeaways maybe, but mostly people's lives are their own unique
Yeah. Yeah.
lives. But the first segment is 2 to 3 actual literary agents reading pitches and first 5 pages and commenting on what works and what
Oh,
doesn't work on it.
nice. That's
It's
fun.
and it's and it's pretty fascinating. Yeah. Um
Yeah. That's great.
the and so that's sort of the opposite end of what we're talking about with
Yeah.
like writing the book that is the book you want to write. But if you're looking at the writer's market and being like, who do I even send this to? How do I do it? You can read a book on writing, pitches, and it's really great to hear actual agents saying,
Nice.
this resonates with me, this does not.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to sound too hopeless. The key to being successful in publishing, to me, as I've like watched all these people over the last 10 years be successful, and I've watched myself fail a lot. You got to build your reader base. There's ways to build your reader base fast, and there's ways to build your reader base slow. but you got to build your reader base, and it's unlikely to happen with one book. So
Yeah, and I would
yeah,
say two things. So that's my goal this year, is to, because I don't make any money selling
yeah,
my fiction. And my goal is to build a email list that will buy the next book when it comes out.
yeah,
And then of course you have to publish at least 2 books a year for that to
yeah.
sort of work. Um, but I'll tell you the number one, if you're thinking about like, how am I going to do that, or what, number one thing is go and find that review of your book on Amazon that is written by somebody that you do not know that loved your book.
Hmm.
One, it feels great.
Yeah, it feels
It's
really
a
good.
it's a total trip, but it also buggers and believability. Like, how can there be somebody out there who
Hmm.
likes what
Yeah.
I wrote,
Who's not my
uh,
mom?
who's
Yeah.
not my mom? But there is, and there is for almost every kind of book.
Hmm.
I mean, not every kind of book, but almost every kind of book. There's a tribe out there. So the idea that you can put together, out of the 300 million people in the United States, you can put together a list of 3,000 people who like what you do and are apt to buy your book, is not as far-fetched
Yeah.
as it sounds. And with ads for authors, things like that, there are some tried and true ways of finding those people, which is hopeful. See, I'm not all doom and gloom. So,
No, I love it.
but yeah, that for the first time you start reading reviews and you're like, I don't understand.
It's motivating.
My books are just fine. I
Yeah.
enjoy them. They're fun. They're not changing anybody's life. They're
Yeah.
just fine. And I would not be at all surprised if people read them and were like, this is fluff, 3 stars, whatever. But
Well,
then there's people who are like, this is just what I needed, five
yeah.
stars.
Well, and I'll tell you the truth. Like, I loved the first 4 books I wrote. I loved them. They did not take off. Other people did not love them as much as I
Mhm.
did. I really enjoyed them. I enjoyed writing them. I liked the characters. They're quirky. They're weird. They're very much me. And then I tried to write to market, and I hated it, and it burned me out. It was really hard. And I wrote books that I don't really enjoy, that I don't want to continue. Like, they're good books, but they're not. And by the time I got to the third one, I've stopped being fun. Right. Like, by the
Yeah.
time I get to the third one, the books are getting weird again. Um, so I just, with my most recent ones, I was just like, you know what? This is what I'm gonna do. I write these kind of books. Like, this is what I write. So, and I'm back to writing books that I love again. Like, it's a lot more fun.
And for me, I didn't write a book until I was 47
Mhm.
because I wanted to write the book, right?
Yeah.
And that is so handicapping.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It
so when
hurts.
I was just like, I'm just going to write something stupid, I had so much fun
Yeah.
and wrote a decent book, and
Yeah.
now that I've done, I'm on my seventh one like that. The plots that I'm outlining now are outside of that series and are ones that I want to sort of put all the tools that I've learned to use and see if I can do something better. But I
Yeah.
don't, but I'm feeling I'm confidence not the right word, but I'm still not feeling that pressure of it's got to be the great American novel. So,
Yeah.
but I feel like I can level up my skills with all the craft that I've learned, and write something better without incapacitating myself with self-doubt and crippling fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. Next question. Issue you've been, or problem you've been pondering in your own work.
In my own work, see, you just said issue or problem I've been pondering.
Oh, I mean, it can
Um,
just be when you're pondering it,
well,
doesn't have to
I'm
be.
pondering one in author services, which is coaching, right? So
Okay.
you do a ton of coaching.
I do a
And
ton of coaching.
until this year, I hadn't really done any coaching at all, and it's fun and it's lucrative. It's like developmental editing, but early enough that you can really help someone save themselves a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like there's so much. I'm sort of surprised by how rudimentary the information I'm providing people is,
Mm,
because there's so many opportunities out there for self-teaching.
yeah.
I can name you 5 books right now that would teach you as much as paying me 50, $60 an hour would teach you. And sure, I'm, charming and fun to hang out with, but a session with one of us would be even more interesting and useful if you'd done that homework
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, and I think I've just come to the place where I don't think people learn that way.
No, well, I was just going to say there are different kind of learners, and one of the things I'm learning having a 12-year-old that's fairly new to our family. My 14-year-old has exactly the same learning style as I do, which is let me go read a book on that.
Yeah.
Um, but the 12-year-old doesn't learn that way at all, and it's an experience.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's learning style, but I do think a lot of it is, it's just like when people talk about getting your button chair to get the words down. Like, I think there are people who don't necessarily, writers who don't necessarily understand that a lot of it is just doing a little bit of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And I think yeah, I agree. I think my natural style is a learning style is a style of like intense desperation, where like if I want to learn something, I obsess and I like grab everything I possibly can on that topic as hard and as fast as I can. Has to be problem based. I have to be solving a problem. But I do know that like not everybody's built like me. And thank God, because
I'm the
otherwise
opposite of that.
you'd have a lot of neurotic people really running
Yeah.
around. Yeah.
I am much more of a magpie and more of a, oh, this is interesting. I'll read half a
Interesting.
book about that and then I'll move on to something else. So
Interesting. That's
yeah.
fun. Um, the problem I'm pondering is a cast problem. Uh, JP and I are on season 2 of Nerds, and we've split our cast in half. And we sent half the cast to DC, and we kept half the cast in New Richmond in the small town. And I'm writing the cast in New Richmond, and I'm really feeling the pain of we sent all of the characters that brought the comedy to DC. And I'm left with all of the hard asses in New Richmond. And so getting the combination of characters to create comedy is really important. You can't,
Yeah.
like, comedy just doesn't happen. You have to have the right personalities together to make it work, and they have to be absurd, right? Like the combination has to be absurd. You have to have like the bubbly character mixed with the intense lone wolf. You have to have the like snarky mean character mixed with the naive character, right? Like to get them to like actually work. You have to have like the super self-serious character mixed with the practical jokester, right? Like to, and so we took our naive, wide-eyed character, our burnout, snark, and our very self-serious character. We sent them all to DC. Comedy there is easy. On back in New Richmond, I have the grumpy hard ass, I have the angry badass, and I have the very confident military personality. And it's not funny. So
You know, it's interesting because you see that over and over again as something progresses, you sort of naturally add new characters,
yeah,
and then suddenly you have too many characters, and then you have to split them up, whether it's
yeah,
Avengers or whatever.
whatever.
You see it
Yeah,
over and over again. Uh, one answer is killing more characters more often,
yeah,
so that you keep your core group small.
yeah,
Now you have to, theoretically kill. You don't have to actually
yeah,
kill them, but like moving them on. Um, but one thing I think that you could try, and this is just off the top of my head, is that present your serious people with um, characters and problems that the other characters could easily solve,
yeah.
but they can't. So
That's a
make them
good call.
feel the loss of the character. Feel
Yeah,
like that guy that I hate because he drives me crazy every day. If he were here, he could solve this like that.
yeah. The
And now
first
I
scene I
have to do it.
wrote,
So
I made the problems absurd.
yeah.
I was like, oh, this is a comical problem, but I can't keep that going very long because those get like, okay, what's the weird problem now? I'm gonna bring a new character in. I'm just trying to figure out the right personality that makes three hard asses funny because I can only bring in one. And it's like, who do I bring in that mix? Now, once I bring the character in, I can start segmenting them off. So I don't have to have the character in the room with all three hard asses all the time.
Yeah.
They can go out in pairs. But it has to be a likable character. The hard
Yeah.
asses have to like them and be annoyed by them at the same time. Because if the hard asses hate them, it's not funny. So yeah, it's just a fascinating character combinations are a fascinating problem.
Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, I think traditionally looking at traditional things, you would go with a kid always works. An old lady always works.
A kid,
A
yeah.
beautiful woman always
The
works. That leaves
vulnerability
them,
of those characters
yeah,
is the key. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
some setup where their toughness doesn't help them
Yeah.
at all, or
I
and
had
actually
kids in the
hurts them.
first, I had ghosts in the first book,
Yeah,
and it ended up being a little sad because you had to deal with the fact that they were
yeah,
dead kids.
right. But I mean, like, Baby Yoda got that.
Yeah.
They nailed
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Like
They totally
what
nailed it.
you know,
Yeah.
and they took a risk, I think, by pairing two almost silent people,
They
uh,
did. They
and
force
it
him
worked.
by having a silent Baby Yoda, they force the Mandalorian to talk.
Right,
He's talking all the time. For a character that's very silent, he talks
right.
all the time.
But
Yeah.
it's not his normal
No,
role, and
they
that's why it
forced
works.
him.
So
Yeah, they forced him to
yeah,
modulate. Yeah.
you need to find something that forces these guys to
Yeah.
modulate.
Okay. Last two questions. Surprise question for you, surprise question for me. My surprise question for you, and this is one I had with a client. So I wanted to ask it to you. What's the difference between a mystery and a thriller?
I know the answer to that.
Oh, nice. I don't have a solid answer for it. So I
Yeah, in a thriller, and this is just generalization, but in a thriller, the main character is the one who is also at peril.
oh,
Even if they're trying to solve a mystery, or if they're trying to save the world, or if they're
yeah.
trying to defuse a bomb, the main character is one of the peril. Whereas in a mystery, the main character may incidentally be at peril, but only because they're trying to solve the mystery.
Huh.
Like someone might take a pot shot at the detective, but the detective is not by setup of the plot the one who is in danger. Usually the person in danger is
I
already
like that.
dead.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah. It
But when you
reminds
think about it, like Poirot is a mystery.
yeah.
Dan Brown writes thrillers because somebody's always trying to
Kill the
kill.
lead character. Yeah.
Hitchcock writes thrillers because he always does a wrong man setup where some normal schmo is suddenly everyone's trying to kill him. He's like, why is everybody
Interesting.
trying to kill me?
Yeah.
So they're in mortal peril.
Yeah. So
That is how
Grisham's
it
are
was
always
described to me.
thrillers. That's good.
Grisham's are always thrillers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's like I stumbled upon a mystery and now they're trying to kill me.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and in most mysteries, at some point, as they get close, the the villain turns on them, tries to get them.
Huh.
But it's not there. The villain wasn't after them at the beginning,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
villain's not after Sherlock Holmes at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's only
That's
when he
fun.
gets close to that was a good one.
Yeah, good answer too. All right, do you have a secret question for me?
I do. I did, man. It's not secret. I didn't know it was secret. But
Well, it's secret because I don't know what you're gonna ask me.
yes, right. But I had one all set, and then I had another one that came up on this podcast that I was listening to. But the first one is they're both dialogue related. The
Okay.
first one is I hear it over and over again to read your stuff out loud, and I cannot do it. Do you do it? I cannot do it.
No,
I just
don't
like
do it.
die of mortal shame by myself in my room. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it's self-conscious. I read 2 pages and I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah. No, I don't read my stuff out loud. One is just too slow. It slows me down too much. If I have to read every page out loud, I can't move forward. So
Because you read faster than you speak.
I do read faster than I speak, and I get really distracted whenever like, my brain starts chasing something else. Um, so I don't do it. I do think it's a good technique, especially if you're struggling with character voices. If all the characters sound the same, I find reading them out loud helps me to notice that. Um, but I don't read a whole book. I'll just read a scene because you really only need a
But
scene to catch that problem. But
eh,
yeah,
I was
that's
feeling bad, so you made me feel better about that.
yeah, I don't do it. I have found it's very helpful for some people. Some people really like it. I also find that the people, this is just a weird connection. I have no scientific evidence to back it up. It's just anecdotal, but the people I know that really like reading their stuff out loud also like dictating stories. They seem to go
Which I can't do.
together. Yeah, I can't do it either.
I
They seem
have
to go together.
recommended to clients to read a scene out loud because when it's like just to illustrate to them that nobody talks that way,
Yeah,
right? Just
yeah.
so, but yeah, my own stuff. And then
I've
oh,
told
go
people
ahead.
to get three people,
Mhm.
especially if you have three people in your house, highlight the lines of each character in the scene and have different people read the lines like it's a play.
Oh my God, I could so never be a playwright. That would involve people in my presence reading something that I
Yeah.
wrote
Oh, it's super embarrassing.
out loud.
Yeah. It's super embarrassing.
I'm turning red just thinking about
Yeah.
it.
Sometimes I make my children do it though.
Whereas giving
Okay, read
somebody a
this.
manuscript and saying, if you could just write some notes on this,
Yeah. You just put some notes.
that would be great.
Yeah. Look at the margin.
Other things having to do with interior monologue, interior thoughts.
Mm.
One of those agents on that website, on that podcast that I was listening to, made a suggestion. She was reading the first 5 pages and she said, you know, there's not enough emotion there. There's not enough volatility. And she said, um, in our people's inner thoughts are obsessed with comparing, which I'd never heard anyone say before, but I thought that was fascinating. So I
Mm-hmm.
just sort of interested in what you thought. And also one that made much more sense is that everybody has a much more twisted internal relationship with money than
Interesting.
exterior.
I've never thought
So
about that.
interior thoughts about money should be more fraught,
That's interesting.
which I thought was interesting. But I
Yeah,
never heard about comparison. Like we compare, we're humans. All we do is compare.
and I would say we don't necessarily compare other people to ourselves because I think that's where you naturally go.
Mm-hmm.
I think we compare how we want things to be and how things are. We're constantly, we have expectations, internal expectations of how things are supposed to be, and then there's how they happen. And that's where you create that conflict between the inner monologue and the actual scene,
Mm-hmm.
where the inner monologue becomes a stress builder, anxiety builder, because the inner monologue has an expectation of how things are supposed to be going, and they're not always going that way. They have an expectation about who people are supposed to be and how people are supposed to behave, and they don't go that way. And then the inner monologue can play off of the difference between their expectation and the person. So like, and that's where like jealousy comes in. Like if you expect everybody to be like you, and then a woman shows up in the scene, let's say your character is somebody who's a little shy and struggles to talk and is like a little closed off, but has a close group of friends. And then all of a sudden, a bombshell shows up that is also confident and talented and strong, right? Like this is the kind of like common YA school, perfect girl
Mm-hmm.
theme. The inner monologue of the shy character is constantly about how unfair it is that this person has all this stuff. What's happening is the inner monologue is like, I expect everyone to be like me, and this person's defined my expectations, and therefore I'm angry that they're
Mm-hmm.
defining my expectations. But I like thinking about it as expectations because it flips the other way too, in that like in that instance, you feel like it's unfair that that person is better than your expectations. You can, if you think about it as expectations, though, the inner monologue can also stress and worry about people not living up to their expectations. So it works both ways, where like your inner monologue can be like, I wish Jordy would just be who Jordy's supposed to be. Right. Like so it goes it can go either way. And you can start that inner monologue on like really good ones, or even get down to like conversational level of like, why isn't this going the way it's supposed to go? Why did he say that? Why did he do that? Right? Like it's always that question of like, I thought it was going to go this way and it went another way, generates conflict and anxiety in the scene itself. But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just thinking as we were talking that I constantly rehearse what I think is going to happen, and I don't think I'm alone in that. But
Nope.
you never see that in a book because it'd be so boring.
No, but what you do see a lot in,
Let me think about this 18 times before the scene actually happens.
yeah, really good writers. Nora Ephron uses this as a trick all the time, in that the character processes scenes after they happen and thinks about how they wish they would have responded, which
Mhm.
is a processing of like, this is what happened and this is what my expectation is, and I wish my expectation of myself had showed up instead of myself. She does that all the time. She'll do it a lot to like create character growth, set up character growth. Like early on something will happen, a character will like fail their own expectations. While they're failing their own expectations, they comment on the fact that they're failing their own expectations, and then there's always a scene afterwards where they reflect on the fact that like they wish they had been this kind of person and not that kind of person. Well, then at the end of the book they finally make the choice to be that kind of person and have to decide if that's actually the right or the wrong choice. So
And
it's that
because they've
like,
told you that early on, you are looking for that
you're looking
growth.
for it. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is going to happen. Like this is the growth arc we're looking for. Like, you know, I'm trying to think of a good example from a Nora Ephron movie since I just used her name. Oh, You've Got Mail. The Meg Ryan character does this all the time. She's like, I wish I could just find the right zinger to say to somebody when they piss me off. And then she has the moment where she says the right thing and she like cripples him. And he looks at her and he's like, nice job. And he walks away. And she's like, oh, that felt like crap. Like, so it's not like, you know, but it's that like setting up, but using that monologue to set up expectations that pay off.
Do you know that there's actually a name for that?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, in French, it's called l'esprit d'escalier,
Oh,
and it translates to the spirit of the staircase because it's that thing that you say as you're leaving. This the
huh.
thing that you think of as you're leaving.
Oh, fascinating.
You know, the like as soon as the person's out the door, you're like, oh, I should have said such and
That's
such.
so interesting. I didn't know there was a
So,
term for it. That's awesome.
uh,
Um,
yeah, my character sometimes just shouts the thing afterwards
nice. That's fun.
after the other person's long
Yeah.
gone. They're
I
like,
like
oh,
that a lot. Yeah.
damn.
My characters tend to be very worry driven and anxiety driven, especially my protagonists. So they tend to worry about it after. But they worry about it before, they worry about it when it's happening. They fail, and then they worry about the consequences of their failure. That's kind of how that's that's my, and that's why people love my books. So,
I I really like what you said about liking your early books because I've been going back and doing redoing paperbacks of my early books, and just as I'm formatting, like you can't help but read, you
yeah,
know, and I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
this,
yeah,
oh, that's, I forgot I put that in there.
yeah,
That's, you know, it's
yeah,
nice to feel like to not be mortified by it.
yeah. It's nice.
Again, probably because I chose a topic that had zero stakes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my early books are terrible, but I had a great time. So, yeah, and I can fix the things that my later books, I fix the things that are terrible and still have a great time. So that's important. Like with nerds, I have a great time writing nerds. It's fun. And I'm not making the mistakes I made in my early books, which was too serious and too sad. Of course, I do put ghost children in.
Yeah.
That have to explain why they're dead. And that's sad.
Do you guys have the paperback coming out for that?
Oh, it's, yeah, it comes out March 18th. Very excited.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's 600 pages. It's a monster. It's 189,000 words or something like that. It's an insanely large book.
And you did it in Atticus
Yeah, yeah, we
without
did
it
in Atticus.
crashing on you? Because
You know,
I've
JP
had
did it. I
size
don't know.
troubles.
You'd have to
Yeah.
ask JP. I have no idea if it crashed on him or not. I tried it for a little bit, and then he was like, "Can I just do that, please?" I was like, "Oh, thank God." Yeah, I was like, "Yes." Oh man. Oh yeah. Anyway, all right. Anything
All
else we
right.
want to talk about before we sign off?
No, this is great. I hope if you actually play this for anyone that they enjoy listening to us
Of course
talking
they
about
will.
craft.
Full of wisdom. Yeah.
You know me, I make fun of the podcasts where people just natter on, but I feel like we were talking about actual
Yeah,
craft
we had good
things in a
questions. Yeah.
very crafty manner. So
Yeah. Yeah. Now I
uh
gotta sing the jingle. Dee time with Tom. Time with Tom.
don't call it that.
All right, I'm stopping the recording.